tweeting anymore.
Not Xing.
No.
And then we can just leave it here.
X-tweeters.
They might be able to hear us. I'm not sure.
They could. They may be. And stream, after all, it does show us, show our screens. You could actually show ourselves, though.
I don't need to.
Okay.
Unable to retrieve the moderators list. Wow.
Oh. Oh, well.
Moderation. Everything in moderation.
You could have music over that.
I could. I could play, let's see. Well, I could do it over the desktop. I don't know if it works on that because I probably don't have it mixed in, but maybe I do.
Well.
Let's see what happens if we do like a, let's see.
Don't have that part.
Achilles tail theme. Oh, there we go. Achilles tail trailer.
You didn't actually make one. Okay, well.
Oh, it is doing something.
Yep.
Of course, I could just show that while I'm doing it.
You could. Bring it full screen.
We'll go.
You're going to start it all over.
Start all over. Go to desktop. Make that full screen.
Okay.
And go click.
Also shows us. Except that I'm not exactly on
You're
the
not
screen.
exactly in camera. You want to be in camera? I thought you didn't like to be on camera screen.
It's the principle of the thing there.
Because you're the principal of the corporation?
Maybe.
The principal game developer.
Happy Saturday! Where did you guys go to school? Any proud alma maters? Hero U, perhaps? Back from the library in time! Congratulations! What, Corey?
I'm clapping along.
Oh, here. Oh, yeah. He's enjoying the music. Yes.
Maybe my best friend Fritz will help me. He's a centaur and a wizard.
Okay.
I'm not getting any air from that fan at all now.
You aren't. I'm not getting much air because it's being blocked by the chair where it is. Oh, well. Okay. Summer days at Hero U. Achilles Tail. Interactive adventure.
It's an old video. What can I say?
Well, no, it's not bad, though. I mean,
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday to you all.
I forgot to put on a
yes, so you'll
t-shirt,
have
but I got my Space Shuttle t-shirt
You do.
instead.
Yes.
In honor of India landing an unmanned spacecraft on the moon.
Yes. Congratulations to the India team. If you ever saw the picture on...
Lori was very thrilled.
Women, all sorts of women were part of that team. Pretty exciting, yeah.
Almost
so
as if women are real people.
Yeah, almost as real. If scientists could
Let's see.
you know.
So we could go for like India.
So at any rate, hello, yes. Brother to Drummer says, where did we go to school? I went to Coronado High School in Arizona, and then ASU, Arizona State University, where I was in the educational program.
They show this guy.
I know.
This doesn't look like a
no,
woman.
that doesn't look like women. At any rate, what you were saying, Corey, where were you? What would you?
What was the question? Where did I go to school?
Yeah.
I went to high school in 3 different places.
Yes.
Abington High School in Pennsylvania, near Philadelphia. Then I spent 1 year, actually 4 different places.
4 different places.
Did I? No, I didn't. We had 2 different schools in Berlin, but I was only at the one now I think about it.
Okay.
So I was at Kant Gymnasium in Berlin, which was West Berlin at the time, but now just part of Berlin, in Spandau, a section of Berlin. I think it was in Spandau. And then I went to Westchester High School in Los Angeles, near the LA airport. You just made me totally in the dark.
I did make you dark
You made
because
it all-
then we aren't. I was being bleached out.
Okay, well, I'm
So
now
now-
totally dark.
You're not. That's a fine color for you.
Okay.
It looks real.
I could turn that on.
You don't need to. At any rate, yes.
It would balance your light coming from the window.
Yeah, well.
And then I went to college at UC Santa Barbara, the College of Creative Studies
Yes.
in California.
Yes, on the water.
On the water, yeah, by the beach.
It's a really...
And it was. We had a beach much like the OU beach.
Mm-hmm.
And we had people did frisbee and stuff. We had the one problem we had was oil leakage from natural oil seepage, and when they used to have drilling platforms offshore. So you'd get tar all over your feet after walking the beach, and have to clean off the tar. I had a tar remover by the
Really?
by the showers.
Yeah, thrilling. Ugh, ugh, ugh. But it was better than being in Arizona, I'll tell you, where it was just hot.
Oh, you had something like beach. You had sand.
Not too much.
Not that much. You're
No.
desert, but no sand.
We're not a sandy desert.
Worst of all worlds.
We're a cactus desert. That's what we are.
I had saguaro.
Mm-hmm. So, any rate, yes, it is that time again for people that actually, went to school at some point in time.
Sweet potato mousse reminds me of pamplemousse that we
Yeah,
just
I
saw
know.
recently, and I meant to look that up
Do
and
you know what
hadn't.
pamplemousse means?
Yeah,
I've seen it before, so yeah. Who knows? You could
I
always
don't
look it
see
up.
that picture you had.
No, I don't.
It's on the Mary
It
Sue?
was Facebook. It was
Oh.
Facebook. So you'll
Anyway,
never
so
find
Lori
it.
saw a picture of the team that successfully did the launch from India, and it was about 80% women,
Yeah.
which in a country not renowned for its gender balance, pretty fucking
yeah.
cool. Did I use a bad
Yes.
word?
Yes, you did.
Uh,
Naughty word.
It was quiet.
Yes, it was a
No, we don't notice
quiet, naughty word, right?
Mustn't say that
Oh,
naughty
there
word.
we go. Thank you.
Pamplemousse is French for grapefruit. Okay, so
Thank you.
was it a restaurant or a store?
It was a
that you
restaurant.
saw
It was
at?
a restaurant.
Okay, grapefruit. That's interesting. My parents frequently served us grapefruit for breakfast. They would slice it in half and then put sugar, just regular granulated sugar, all over it. And then we had special grapefruit spoons that were serrated tips, sharp tips that we would scoop out the sections.
Whereas we ate half a grapefruit by first taking a knife and slicing all the meat off the center of it, and then pouring maple syrup over it. And
That's
so
roughly
the
equivalent to sugar.
maple syrup would get down in all the cracks that you had made with your fork. So,
Ah,
well, yes, those old days. Yes. So, at any rate, yes, back to school days. I don't know about you, but we had the image of Sean depressed going back to school, and I know as a
let's
kid.
I'll just put that on as the
Yeah.
on break.
Yes.
There's the depressed Sean
Yes.
being kicked out.
Well, yes, but now he's going back to school. That's
He's
the
going back
depressed-
to school, I
As he's
see.
heading towards the school.
I
year.
see. So he's depressed because he's heading
He's
back
going
to school.
back to school. I don't know if when we were kids, going back to school was not the highlight of our summer, and we had a far more summer than you people did.
I went to a school in 9th and 10th grades that was a modern school they had built in the 70s, and was it 70s or was it late 60s? Late 60s, in the 60s, and it had been designed for a central air conditioning system. They had towers at each end of it that had been designed for installing air conditioners. And at the last minute, the school district, or probably the county, decided that they couldn't quite afford that, so they did not install the air conditioning system. So it got pretty warm early and at the end of the school year. And about 10 years later, as things started to heat up, they realized they really had to have those air conditioners in, and installed them at a cost of 10 to 20 times would have done to build it while they were building the school.
Yeah, well, living in Arizona, it was mandatory to have air conditioning.
Southern California, nobody ever had air conditioning. Everyone relied on you open the windows so we got hot. Whereas now a lot more places have air conditioning because it's hotter than it used to be.
Yep.
Okay, sweet potato mousse is in grad school. It's back to school, and most of my classmates have children who are also going back to school.
Yeah, Yes, that's very interesting. Wow.
Our family has always been kind of late in having children. So let's see, my parents were born then. So I was the youngest child, but my mom was over 30 when I was born. And what about you? How old was your mom when you were born?
No, I don't know.
You could probably calculate it would take work.
I'd have more work than it's worth.
And then our son was mid-30s before he had their son is currently their only child. So 30-year generations, and we know a lot of families that have like 18 or 20, they all get children.
Yes, we're more conservative in that sense. Let's see. So about school, did you like going back to school? Did you enjoy school when you were a kid?
I mostly did. I mean, I was a good student. That helps. That you know, you get the kudos of doing well in school. Although, at least when I was, you know, first few years, the smart kids were kind of ostracized. That it was not cool to be smart.
Well, it was not cool to be you.
Well, never cool to be.
Yes,
yeah.
right. That's
my name Corey was, you know, later became popular after Different Strokes and something else that had a character named Corey. But Corey was just an unheard of name when I had it. And that was weird. Anything different is weird.
I enjoy school too, but that doesn't mean that to this day, at my age, which is very old, I still have anxiety dreams about being in school and not being able to remember my locker number, or having forgotten what was my schedule of which class I was supposed to go to next. And I'm agonizing about the fact that, oh my God, I missed that class and I don't know what the test is going to be. So, yes, those things stick with you.
So Phantom Beaver is playing WoW Hardcore.
Yeah.
And no, we have not tried that. I'm generally pretty good at finding ways to die. Lori's a little more conservative player.
Yes.
She doesn't die as often as I do.
I have played, you know, the most conservative of hunters that have survived almost everything. But yeah, and but I would not. It sounds like an interesting challenge. Yes. Wow, how hardcore is that you can't die in the game. If you die, you're kicked out of the game, effectively, and you can't play again. You have to stay alive, whatever you do, for as long as possible. I think it's mostly like a contest to see who, you know, like a Tontine, you know, who's going to survive to be the final player.
Does everyone put in money and then they all get,
yeah,
the winner gets it
really.
all?
That's what a Tontine
So they should have had it, yeah. I found for the last 5 to 10 years, WoW has been a little bit unbalanced for solo play. That you really want to be some kind of tank character. You need high survivability if you're going to go out and fight monsters by yourself. My favorite is Guardian Druid, which has some healing spells and also has extremely good resistance to damage and survivability.
Yes.
Death Knights are also very good. So are Warriors, but Warriors can't self-heal.
There we go, forgetting your locker combination. It's been decades since I graduated high school, and I still have an occasional dream of not being able to find my locker. Remember my locker combination or which class to go to next to. Yeah, isn't that interesting? We all have those traumas of that being the scariest, awfulest thing, yes.
I think we got a different locker every year.
We did. We did, too.
I don't remember that I don't think I had a locker until... Maybe, I don't think even in junior high. By high school we had lockers, but elementary school now, and I don't think we had lockers.
Well, we didn't have it in elementary school, and our elementary school included junior high, so it was only high school that did that. Yes. I remember both combinations to the elementary school, and oh my gosh.
Well, you must have had the same one all the way through then,
right.
Yeah, we got assigned a new one every year, so. Lori's combination story had to do with Sierra when she got so stressed out working at Sierra that she couldn't remember the door code to get in.
Yeah, and that's that kind of thing, but it was in real life again. Yeah, I think I wrote down my locker number so I wouldn't forget.
For school?
Yeah.
I have no recollection. I mean, I can't even really remember if I had a locker. I suppose I must have.
I still remember my high school ID number, but I only remember 3 phone numbers. Weird with what sticks with you. Yeah, really.
Yeah, I still remember my phone number from when I lived in Pennsylvania, because that was probably where I lived the longest for, up till that point, for most of my life, because that was kindergarten through 10th grade, so it was 10 years plus. And so I remember the phone number. I remember you didn't use strict numbers for phones. Mine started with Turner, with TU was the prefix.
Mm.
So it was Turner 67905, I think.
Yeah.
And my address was easy to remember. I was at 555 Pine Tree Road. Yeah, 555 Pine Tree Road.
Yeah, I don't, those things don't stick with me. I can't remember I barely remember street names of the places we used to live. But
I had a little bit of trouble remembering my San Jose address, but it actually came to me once I thought about it.
But I do remember songs that I learned when I was 4 years old. So that's the way my brain encodes things. Numbers, not so much. Names, horrible with them. But I can still sing songs that my uncle sang to me when I was 4 years old. So what can you say?
Musically inclined. Lately, Lori has been watching a lot of. She really enjoyed Good Omens 2. I guess the second season of Good Omens.
Yeah.
And has been watching music videos that are take scenes out of Good Omens second season and set it to different songs.
Yep. I really enjoy that.
So I have.
All right.
I don't think she ever watched second season of Mandalorian though.
No, I haven't managed that. I'm going to go through all of the first season first.
But she's ahead of me on a lot of other shows. She's been watching a lot of Korean fantasy TV series.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to our
topic?
Topics and our people. Yes, the peeps.
So our thought on back to school here, Lori's thought on this was has to do with going back to school is when we decided to make the Hero U Road Redemption game, and that we were returning to the School for Heroes that Lori ran online for quite a while, and of course returning to game development, which is a whole set of lessons in itself.
Right. So we'll try and go over some of the lessons learned over the course of it that we haven't talked about 375 times because, we tend to talk about things.
Sybil wants to know if you play an instrument.
I play, well, I wouldn't say I play.
You have over time played.
Over time, I have played an accordion, and I have played an auto harp, and I played, well, not really.
Pretty much those two.
Those two were my main loves, yes. And I still have 2 accordions and an auto harp.
Whereas I've mainly played guitar, just dabbled tiny bit with auto harp and mountain dulcimer.
Yeah.
Which is the 3 or 4 string variety as opposed to the hammer dulcimer, which has a lot of strings and hammers and stuff.
Oh, my first instrument was a zither.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Yeah, I did play something.
But my brother was big into auto harp and owned several auto harps and subscribed to the Auto Harpaholic and stuff, so he got us into it a little bit.
CT times CB says, I'd like some advice from you two, non-Sierra related. Say that a video game was split in 2 and only half was released, and now it has been only almost 30 years since then, and you knew the second half still existed, archived. What would be the correct process for making sure that the other half of the game isn't eventually lost to magnetic degradation?
Well, it is true that, even like the floppy disks you had from the 90s, a lot of them don't work anymore. So I had a lot of backups of stuff on floppies, and later discovered that nothing could read those floppies, and of course our computers now don't even have floppy drives for them.
I would suggest that the right way for doing it, maybe not the correct one or the legal one, is to put it up on a pirate bulletin board. Honestly, you if you want something to survive like that, it's not going to survive. So
distribute it. Get into a lot of different people's hands.
Get it distributed, yes. And, put it up there. Because the internet is forever, or at least there will be somebody that archived it somewhere else.
So you could burn it to a DVD-ROM, but even that is not guaranteed long-term. But, if it's never been released, eventually people will stop caring.
CT times CV said Good Omens 2 satiated themselves a little. My wait until November for the 60th anniversary episodes of Doctor Who. It's on a gap year at the moment. Yeah, I'm looking for This Flag Means Death. That's the one I'm waiting for too, so yeah.
Well, we're not proper Doctor Who fans. We've seen a few episodes of it.
Yes.
And we did run the gaming at a Doctor Who convention one time, but can't really say we're who's yet.
Our Doctor Who was Tom Baker, so that just puts us back in the old age. But I did see it when it first came out.
Colin Baker also.
This the second season, second Doctor Who is when I started watching it, and we finally got the British television shows to come over to America. And so I watched the second Doctor Who when it was just really, really dumb and corny and that sort of thing. But then Tom Baker actually made it really fun and really interesting. I much preferred that. And then I haven't seen but random episodes since then.
I did watch the entire The Prisoner, and had was it CDs or VHS tapes that I had.
I think we had CDs.
I think I had a CD collection of it, but I only saw about 6 of them on the reruns.
Yes,
so.
but that's a little bit before most of these people's time. Yes. Oh, hey!
The Prisoner is well worth watching. Track it down.
Only if you like weird British movies, television shows. Very really weird.
And very similar to The Prisoner was the original Adventures with John Steed
and Emma Peel. If you haven't seen, something of that.
Yeah, I was going to say John Steed and his male partner for.
You did. Nobody watched those.
Then we had the second. Then you had the female associate, and then Diana Rigg as Emma Peel, and
that's when
that erased everything
the show,
else.
Everything that was the real show. Yes.
John Steed and Mrs. Peel. Yep.
Yeah. Sweet Potato Moose said, "Oh hey, I did beat the original Quest for Glory for the first time this summer. Great game. I liked it better than most new games. It really felt ahead of its time. Yay!"
Oh, congrats. We occasionally have. Everyone should be on our Discord.
Yes, Brainiac says, "Yo ho ho," says I. Yes. Yeah.
Old school shareware.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Indeed.
So I should bring up a link
Late
to our
night
Discord.
Greetings from Europe. Thank you, Gone Kitty
Hi,
Wild.
Gone Kitty. Let's see. In Marrakesh, Morocco, they're holding the World Bridge Championships currently, and I think there's one more day left of the round robin before they go into the knockouts.
Okay, so what are you
some very
trying to
exciting
do?
matches. I was trying to get to Transolar Games
Okay.
and go to invite people.
Yes, I'll come to our
everyone.
Mercury here. Yeah, you have to actually type.
Kofefe should be on our Transolar Games Discord. Here's an invitation. So if you were to follow that link, you will be able to get to our Discord, or you can simply search for Transolar Games, 2 words, on Discord and find us. And there's a lot of very active discussions there on Sierra Games and Hero U and stuff, books, TV,
stuff,
films, music, AI, politics, philosophy,
puns,
and puns. Above all, puns.
Yes.
Below all, actually, just under the
Below
end.
all, it is near the
It
end.
is the very last of the non-voice channels, except for Heroes channels.
Yeah.
The penitentiary there is. Yep.
Uh-huh.
So yesterday, there we go. This one's subtle, so I guess I better put it up here. It's not full screen. Can I do this? Yeah. There we go. Can you call me a taxi at 7 a.m. tomorrow? Okay. Thanks, Dad. Thumbs up. And then today, 0700, which of course that would be 7 a.m. They did.
Yeah, it is.
0700. Dad texts, "You're a taxi."
Yes. Don't ask Corey to tell it you. Let's see. Maybe someone can explain the maze in Quest for Glory 2 because I played it for an hour and I got so confused. Let's assume that
That's
maze
this maze here, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, well, could be. Yep. If you're talking about the
Actually,
city
that was
streets, the
Okay, so the maze, city streets.
I would guess it Quest for Glory 2.
Okay, well, first of all, there was a map that came in the box with the game. I guess I can go back to full screen. There was a very nice, beautiful map that came with the game that
Shows you everywhere.
shows you where to get around. There are Tariqs and Darbs. I don't recall which is which, but I think
one is north and south,
I
and
think
the other is east and
I think
west.
Tariqs was primarily north-south, and
I
Darbs
think
were primarily
Darbs are
east-west.
Yes.
And of course, it's a first-person perspective, as in a 3D game. And basically, you just keep track of where you're making left turns, right turns. Now, just to confuse you thoroughly, is if you talk to Ali Chica, who is selling stuff in the in the entrance plaza outside the inn, he will give you directions to get to the money changer that will get you thoroughly lost and confused.
Yeah. But he is telling you the truth.
It is true. It is correct directions. Just
Then you turn right again. You know, it's
Yeah.
you know, turn right then.
So the key to those is to remember that if the road makes a right turn, but there are no other, but it's not an intersection, then just figure you're still on the road and don't even worry about it.
Thank you, Brainiac.
Just
Give
keep
them
track.
a real nap in that. It's either that or play the remake, which the remake has a map system going, so you can actually figure it out.
Yeah. The other thing is when you eventually get your money changed, then come back and buy the magic map from Ali Chica. First of all, you can buy a compass. It really is a compass and sort of shows you where north is. Second, the map is a real magic map in that if you found an important location like one of the other plazas or the magic shop or something, then it will show up in your map and you can click on it and just go there.
Yes, I did not know you included a map. I tried to write down what Ali Chica told me, but it hurt my brain.
That's what happens when you don't read your documentation.
And that's what you get when you listen to Ali Chica and the Marx Brothers anytime, really. And the AGI remake has a simplified Ali system if the actual layout is too much for you, and the remake is free. Exactly.
And it's quite good. It's beautiful.
Yes. I
They
would
did a
play
really
our
nice job.
game, our original game, for the combat, and you can play their game for the excitement, really, because
Yeah.
you'll die.
Yes,
You know.
the combat is very hard.
There we go.
So this is the one that got shared here, desktop.
Yep, in case you didn't look it up. Famous Adventurers Correspondence School. And there it's got a map.
So you start in the Gate Plaza, which is center of the left diagonal there.
Okay, well, I wouldn't.
And the
I'm
money
not
changer.
sure I would get around here. The money chamber is at the corner.
Sun Team is right here at the end of Dinar Tariq. So that's the other thing is all the names are things that Laurie pulled out of Arabic English dictionaries. They are real Arabic words.
Yeah.
And our currency, the small coins were
Dinars and
the big
one
coins
was
of dinar and centime, which is French cent, and dinars are effectively dollars.
Yes, but they were also used as Arabic coins.
So
as well.
therefore, of course, the money changer is at the very end of Dinar Tariq.
Yes.
So, so what you would do in order to get the money changer is you would go up that green road on here. So go just straight north to the Fountain Plaza. North is actually on diagonal here. And then you would
Interesting.
turn left from the Fountain Plaza
Depending upon whether you were facing north or south.
at the intersection.
Because you could
It
be,
changes directions.
because it changes just because I have a weird sense.
The magic compass helps.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that was actually my idea. Was that when the two has the fountain, because you only have a proscenium point of
Yeah.
view, a stage point of view. I said the way we'll handle a circular plaza is the perspective will flip when you get onto the north half of it,
Yeah.
so that you could see. So you're not looking at the boring walls. And I think that was probably thoroughly confusing. The desert does the exact same thing. When you go out in the desert, if you go far enough south through the desert, it flips perspective.
Right.
Thoroughly confusing, and that's why you need a magic compass.
Right. which in effect could be a very frustrating puzzle, but we tried not to make it.
So I believe the Ali Chica instructions has you start out north from the Gate Plaza, turning left, going all the way around there, taking the Tariq of Cadiz from there, turning right, and then ending up on Dinar Tariq and eventually at the Moneylender. But the easier way to do it without having a map in front of you is go up to the Fountain Plaza, turn left.
Turn right.
When there's the road split, stay on the road you're on to the right and then left. And then when you hit AT intersection, turn left onto Dinar Tariq and then just follow Dinar
it
Tariq
all the way around to the end. Yeah.
So that's a much. I mean, it doesn't sound easy spoken, but it really is. I found it pretty easy to navigate that way.
Okay, serious question to Corey and Lori. How did you manage to keep Quest for Glory games mostly clear of annoying puzzles? Yes, well, mostly clear. It's a matter of whether that's the annoying puzzle.
Every game has something that you wish you could have changed.
Quest for Glory, King's Quest V, while beautiful, is so crazy in regard to all those mazes and insane, no logic puzzles. We have several rules for game design. One of which, number 1, is the player must have fun. Number 2 is that we're making a game for the players, not for ourselves. We're not against the player.
Right. So it's a cooperative, not
Yes.
a competitive. The game designers have an unfair advantage that we could, for combat, for instance, we could have the monsters win every combat. No problem at all. Mm-hmm. They just always hit. Players miss a lot, and the monster's health regenerates, or whatever. And we could easily do stuff so that the monsters always win, and that's no fun to play. And we're not going to sell a lot of copies of a game in which the monsters are better than the players.
3 is the player must be challenged, though.
Yes.
You don't make a game easy.
Or I would rephrase that as you want players to be able to develop a sense of mastery.
Yes.
So things that are challenging at first, after you've played it a few times, or had a few combats, you should feel like you're getting better at it. That you have a feeling of mastery. You're actually getting better. One of the problems with maintaining challenge on a role-playing game where character stats or levels are continually improving is that that kobold that was a pretty tough challenge to at the beginning of the game becomes just step on it like a bug later in the game.
Right.
So World of Warcraft, sometime about 10 years ago, started changing things over to where zones adapt to your level. So if you're level 30 and you're in a zone, you have a pretty much challenging, but you can do it. And if you're level 50 in that same zone, it's still pretty challenging, but you can do it.
So that's a different kind of philosophy. It says the player should always be challenged. The problem with that is that
you never feel like you've mastered it.
Yes, you don't feel like you're improving. And that was a careful balance we were trying to make with our game system, because honestly, we always kept the player, whether his stats were 50 or 200, we had to make sure that the player felt like there were things too tough for him, but at the same time, like he'd actually made an improvement.
Mm-hmm. So it's hard. Game balance is one of the hardest things. I had read an article that was in White Dwarf magazine, like number 1 or number 2.
Which was a D&D magazine.
Dungeons and Dragons magazine. Well, actually, it wasn't actually D&D at that point, but yeah, it was probably whatever the British system was. But anyway, it was a gaming magazine, and that had a 2-part article called Monster Mark. And the idea of Monster Mark was to effectively simulate combat, look at your stats versus the monster stats, and say, all other things being equal, how many rounds will it take the player on average to defeat the monster? How many rounds will it take, you look it up?
No.
Okay. Will it take the monster to defeat the player? And the ratio of that becomes the difficulty of the monster. So if it takes you 5 rounds on average and the monster would take 3 rounds to kill you, that monster's tougher than you, and it would have a huge monster mark. If it took it 6 rounds to kill you, and you could kill it in 4 rounds, then you were tougher than the monster. It would have a pretty high monster mark, but not overwhelming. So I did a system similar to that with our system, and basically created a combat simulation that I could plug in different numbers and try them out until we got to what felt balanced. Other game designers use spreadsheets, and they will take all the attributes of the monsters and all the attributes of players and feed them in the spreadsheet. The challenge to that, again, is with the role-playing game, those stats aren't static. The player on day 7 has much lower stats than on day 20. So you basically, try to balance it. And my rule of thumb was that players should be able to win 1 combat relatively easily if he's in the right part of the game of the world. Should be able to win 2 combats with some challenge, but by then his health will be down to about a third. And if you tried 3 combats in a row, you were in serious danger unless you healed up in between.
And so the other reason why we managed to keep the annoying puzzles out of Quest for Glory is because I don't like adventure games. I do not like having to hit my head against a puzzle that doesn't make sense.
So here you have it, one of the best-known adventure game designers. Never cared for adventure games.
No, so I don't like that kind of roadblock. I want...
So we made the rule.
I want speed bumps in the game. I want things that slow you down, make you have to work at it to get over it. But I do not want this big stop sign that said, if I didn't think of the right answer, I can't do this. Which is why we went with a 3-approach problem. For any real puzzle, we wanted to have alternate approaches to solving the puzzle because nobody thinks the same. I mean... if you ever tried to solve riddles and you've got the old-fashioned riddles that are very complicated, like the ones in Lord of the Rings and that, it's like you're guessing the writer of that riddle's mind because just like going back to school, there are tests where you tried to solve the logic of several numbers in a row, or you tried to do there were written ones, there were story problems where they, what was the logic, what should they do next, that sort of thing. I could always come up with different reasons or ways of solving it that weren't necessarily the one that was the required one, yes.
Yeah. So one of the classic riddles is the riddle of the Sphinx, which is something like, and forgive me if I'm misquoting this, but something like what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening.
Yeah, that's it. That was it.
And the answer is a person. And as a baby, you're crawling along and you use your arms as if they were legs. So you got 4. As an adult, you walk on 2 legs. And as an old man, you have a cane. That's your 3rd leg.
Yeah, okay.
And that is just a totally arbitrary riddle that is very, very hard because... it's I could probably come up with 5 other answers if I thought of it.
And it's been
there. The right one.
It's been there since the dawn of time, or at least
for at least 2,000 years.
Times were when we were starting to tell stories. So
and now that riddle is a no-brainer because everybody knows it, and so anybody can solve that riddle. But there were riddles, for instance, in Wizardry 2, I guess it was. The Knight of Diamonds, that were pretty tricky, but you had context from the game and what to look for. And the final riddle I could not solve. And the answer clearly was the game title, Knight of Diamonds. That didn't work.
Okay.
And I finally asked someone at a convention or something, or looked it up somewhere, and found out the answer they were looking for was the Knight of Diamonds.
Yes, because
and
the old
if you didn't
games,
type in the, it didn't work because it was a straight character match.
Right. So that's the other thing we were working against in the earliest days, is trying to make so that it wasn't guess the proper syntax to the line to solve a problem.
Yeah, because we had the typed input for the first 2 games, and There was actually a famous puzzle in Leisure Suit Larry 2, I believe it was, which was something like put the bag in the bottle. And Al was a relative novice with the parser at that point, and he coded his own games. So that was what you had to type in. And if you put bag in bottle, or combine bottle and bag, or any of 6 other variations that should have worked, only the one that he had thought of worked.
And that was true for a lot of games.
And later on, he got better at that. And then you had the programmers that went from game to game that knew how the parser worked. And of course, by the time we were on game 3, the parser was gone.
Yeah. Let's see. Gone Kitty Wild said.
Yeah, the riddles from The Hobbit are very confusing to people who never read the book, but they're perfectly fine in the context of a book, because in the context of the book, the whole idea is what the meta behind those riddles is what Tolkien is telling you, is that Bilbo Baggins and Gollum, who are seemingly completely different creatures, are actually from similar cultures. And so they have a common language. They've heard each other's riddles that have been told through time, and kind of know them. So that actually, as a way of showing the commonality between the two characters is awesome. And it works in a book because sooner or later the author tells you what the answer is.
Yes, that's the real key there. Yes, and Belzar says the latter part of the Sphinx riddle is that also the creature is weakest when it has the most legs. I didn't remember that part of it. I'm sure it's just a matter of how
I've never heard that version.
How that one was told. Yes. Sybil Seeker says in Hero U, I liked how the combat difficulty changed drastically depending on how well you trained Sean in the workout room. Yes.
I don't like that. I think I did a bad job on that. I did an okay job, but not a perfect job. And in particular, we had the concept of skills that derive from stats. And different skills like, climbing needs strength and agility, I think, something like that. And we had one attribute that was fitness. And I used fitness as the derivative stat for too many things. So your combat, both your offense and defense, and your hit points, most importantly, your stamina, is derived from fitness. So if you work out every day in the practice room and build up your fitness, you're good at combat. But we did not want that to be the only way to play the game.
Yeah.
And it kind of turns out that whatever else you do in the game, you have to train your fitness.
Fitness is really very important. Yes, more important than it should have been.
Whereas in real life, Lori and I have never had any fitness.
Right. We certainly weren't going to be models for that particular thing.
And we've been fairly successful in life with poor fitness.
Yes.
But apparently a rogue needs it.
Divar says, I feel like a lot of those problems have more to do with the lack of QA. Certainly things like the anecdote Corey told about Al Lowe, but also it's early on. There are no ways of learning how to make games. You made a decision and tried, that was the way to do it.
Yeah, and the other problem is that you have relatively small QA teams at a company, and they are playing the game over and over and over. Well, what happens when you do something over and over and over, if it's at all well designed, is you develop mastery. You become an expert in the game. So you get into testing the final third of the game, and you now have QAers that are master players of that game, testing and coming back and saying, this combat's too easy. So the developer says, oh, okay, and they make it harder. So we had that actually on Hero U. One of our beta testers and one of our biggest financial contributors to the game, who was extremely generous, came in and told us that combat was just way too easy everywhere. Well, meanwhile, I came in, and having not done nearly enough playtesting myself, playtested these things, I said, this combat's way too hard. And first of all, he had fallen into guessed the correct thing to do of building up his fitness super high, and had done all his physical training as opposed to spending time in the library or lockpicking and stuff like that, and where I had done more balanced stuff. And second, he had played this game over and over and over again during testing, and he could master every combat. So what was trivial to him and he felt was, a flaw of the game, it was too easy. I myself was hard, and then I started, as I made it a little tougher for his request, I discovered other players coming to us and saying, this combat's impossible.
So, yes.
So
game balance is hard. Back to that point. Yes.
And it's every player is different. So one of the things we wanted to do but didn't really do, I guess we did have. We had a slider for combat difficulty we put in the game.
Yeah.
And that is really essential because some players, one of our good friends has a muscle disease. It's deteriorating, and she loves playing games, but she does not, cannot do the twitch factor. Mm-hmm. She does everything very slowly and carefully. And if you have a twitch combat in a game, she's not going to do well on it, but she still loves the games. So you want to make it so that players of all ability levels can find a way that they can enjoy the game.
And find a way through it. And that's why we made sure combat was also totally avoidable.
And as far as the puzzles, we made a rule very early on that any puzzle in the game had to have its solution in the game. There had to be clues within the context of the game. You would not need to go out and know outside information. Whereas a lot of other games, the infamous one in one of the early King's Quests was Rumpelstiltskin, spelled backwards. Or it was a backwards alphabet, I can't remember. I think it was spelled forwards, but with a backwards alphabet, Z to A. And not only that, but it had you had the choice of whether it was Rumpel or Rumpel. And that was an almost impossible puzzle.
Which was why hint lines were so popular.
Yes, and books and hint lines became popular.
Yes. And
so we did not want to have any impossible things, and we therefore thought we had made relatively easy games by adventure game standards.
Yeah. But
only more recently we've heard, these games are hard.
Yeah. Sweet Potato Moose says, I find parsers are my favorite interface for talking. Talking to characters in Quest for Glory 1 feels more like a conversation than any other game I played.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, also we try to train you to use the vocabulary and the techniques for speaking in the game so that it does parse it easy and so that you can actually do this.
We had a ridiculously low amount of memory for those games because we were in a 8088 originally until 88 segmented architecture, and that means that all the code that was running at a given time had to fit in a single segment of 64,000 bytes, and so there really was not room for any sophisticated programming. So for a conversation, we had the parser took English sentences and broke it down into tokens, which used less memory. But it still had, really had only about a half a dozen typically, options at a given time.
And Sierra's parser was really the state of the art at the time. So
by the time Quest for Glory 2, it was the state of the art. Pablo Guedes came in and brought AI techniques and natural language processing techniques to the parser, so it could understand full sophisticated sentences. And then by the time they came out with King's Quest 5 and Quest for Glory 3, they said, okay, we need to support 256 color VGA. And Ken wanted the games to work on consoles that didn't have keyboards. So he said, what goes? I want the parser.
Art with the parser. And therefore, we do not have parser games. But my problem with the parser is...
it's the designer's mind.
Let's say Divor says, well, I agree. I also find it misses a lot not having dialogue options. Sometimes you can not find the words you're trying to figure out when you what it is you're trying to ask, and that's when it gets frustrating. Some answers, like yes or no, are easy to give, but other responses to the likes of, what do you think of this, don't work so well.
Actually, both of those are conversational in nature. Okay, so yes only makes sense if the game is asking you a question that has a yes or no answer. And that means that it has to keep track of the state of the conversation and know that which question you're answering yes to, because the parser is actually generic. The parser is coming through and this may not be entirely true, but to some
Make it
extent, the parser is basically has a whole lot of responses, and it is context free. So ask about robot, ask about zoo, ask about healer. All of these can be used at any time when you're in that room with the person, and it doesn't really know if you're at the beginning of the game or late in the game, except to the extent that we have special purpose things. So we're always trying to decide of what is the scope of the parser at a given place.
And in the earliest games, all of our dialogue stuff was all hard coded into the game, and so it was very literal.
Yeah, it was essentially monolithic. So what we had was a priority system that said basically for the parser, first hand the message off to the character you're talking to and see if they can respond to it. And if they say, I don't have a response to this, then it goes to the scene. If the scene doesn't have a response, because you have lookout is also using the parser, look at a tree. So if the tree's nearby, then the tree would be the first responder and say, oh, I can handle that. But if there's no tree nearby, the scene will say, okay, what answer do I want to give to look at tree when there's no trees in the scene? And if it doesn't have a response, then it pops up to the game level. And it's really very difficult to make sure that we covered all the different cases. And in practice, we didn't. We only covered a handful of them.
Yeah. And the other problem is that you never know what you're missing. I mean, the advantage to going to the menu system of that is that you did not miss anything, dialogue-wise. You got everything you needed to know. There was in a dialogue tree that you could find. And you didn't have to, miss half the game because you never thought of the right words or realized you're supposed to ask this person. And in my game design, which most people never bothered to do, is that most of my answers were all time gated, event gated, so that you would have a different answer if it was later in the game and you had done something in the course of the game, so that your answers could change. And that was not possible.
Yeah, that was an innovation that Lori started, I think, with Quest for Glory 2. I don't think it was in 1 at all.
No, it wasn't in 1, because everything, as I said.
But in 2, she started coming up with the idea of events, and that each scene would have multiple events, so that she could then have a completely different dialogue tree in Event 2. And the problem with that, of course, is now, if you ask a question that was handled in Event 1 and should have still been handled, it might have gotten missed.
Yeah, well, you never know.
But like if you're talking to Uhura in the the warrior training area in Quest for Glory 2, then you would be able to ask questions like ask about Uhura, ask about Baby, and then at some point she mentions something about a guardsman, so you might be able to say ask about guardsman, ask about Tarna, and these are all reasonable things to ask about in context. So we made it easy for you by saying if you hit Control A, it typed ask about for you. Mm-hmm. And so we had lots and lots of answers to ask about. Not so many answers to, the moon is green. Mm-hmm. That wouldn't have been handled anywhere because it was A, out of context, and B, it wasn't in the syntax that we were expecting.
Sweet Potato Moose says, I wonder if newer tech could be better at interpreting player inputs like Alexa or now ChatGPT 2, I guess.
Yes, and that now the way ChatGPT works is, I forget the term, it's something like massive language model or large language model that it has a massive amount of data that it can, in a easily accessible database that it can go in. So if you say something like, what was the score of the Red Sox game? It will assume from context that you're talking about the most recent one. Or if you say, what was the score of the Red Sox game on September 5th, 2011, then it probably has that data somewhere. So if you took something like ChatGPT and you fed an enormous database of stuff about the world of Gloriana and the town of Shapir and the city of Shapir and the city of Tarna and so on, then it would do a very good job of answering questions about those facts.
Yeah, I would be very interested in designing a game for that kind of interface, but it would make a very different sort of game.
The other way to do it, of course, is to make stuff not particularly, for doing a game based in the real world, is you could use ChatGPT in there and let players ask anything about anything, or have abstract conversations. And that's basically what ChatGPT does right now.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a game for that, yes. The interesting thing of playing those old Purser games as a kid was learning to convey things in abstract ways, which, since you kind of had to fish for the correct output. And when you didn't really know English, it was a very frustrating and fascinating experience.
And if you grew up in the U.S., you didn't know English very well in most schools.
Obviously, clearly.
So actually, going back to somebody mentioned Alexa, that there was an Alexa game that we heard about a few years ago at Comic-Con, and it was Nolan Bushnell was a partner in this. Who's the founder of Chuck E. Cheese and Atari, and he was working with a guy that was doing a mystery game in which you're basically going to scenes where people all around you are having conversations, and you can hear pieces of the conversation over top of each other, and whoever you're nearest to, you hear more. And then you can use Alexa to ask questions or talk to people on that, and then it would try to be reasonably context sensitive of giving you clues you could eventually use to solve the mystery. And that sounded like a pretty interesting context, but again would be extremely limited because the voice lines are basically whatever the writers came up with that they had the voice actors record, and there are only going to be a few thousand of those unless your budget goes up into the stratosphere. So you don't have that many lines available, and that's all you can work from. So ChatGPT, because it is essentially interpreting language and going into a massive database, and then basically parroting what it's finding in the database, has just a vast amount of stuff it can say.
Let's see, one size mysteriously doesn't fit all. Yeah. And Divor says, I think I'm going to try and prompt players to set difficulty after they played a few combats. That's very good. That's
you can do that, and I always wanted to do the automatic adjustment, and the problem with that, it turns out that's not all that great, because if you have a player that masters the game very quickly, so therefore you make the combats tougher, well, maybe they want every combat to be tough, but maybe they wanted to actually enjoy their mastery and breeze through some of them.
Or maybe they just like stomping squirrels, and doesn't want the squirrel that can fight back, I
was going to say on the hardcore World of Warcraft, I was going to ask whether you were going to Elwyn Forest and spending your entire time killing wild boars until you get to level 60.
Yeah. Let's see. I like games that let you adjust the difficulty level of combat from the start. Yeah, the question is...
But you don't necessarily know what you want.
Yes, you don't need until you start playing, yeah.
There's the Dunning-Kruger syndrome that people tend to think they're better at things than they really are.
That's true.
And the ones who really are good at them tend to think they're not as good as they actually are.
Sybil Seeker says, what do you mean by Twitch combat? I've never heard that term before.
Okay, Twitch combat. That means yes, exactly. Arcade styles rely on reflexes. So Quest for Glory actually has, to some degree, Twitch combat. So you're basically, hitting the up arrow. Assuming you're using the keyboard, you're hitting the up arrow to attack, left arrow to dodge, down arrow to duck, and so on. And you're trying to hit all those keys fast enough to do well in combat.
So we really did have a Twitch game.
Quest for Glory 2, I decided to try to make it a little more of a stat-based RPG. So I put in a delay in there. That if you put in your input in less than 1 second after the previous input, then it would reduce your hit chance.
And so that didn't work.
It worked better than in 1, but it was
invisible to the players, so they just thought the game was unresponsive. So
or that they were missing too often because
right. So
whatever they should have hit. So it turns out that, at least in Quest for Glory 1, the ultimate combat strategy
Was
for all
it?
the work we put into it
Yes.
is hit the attack key over and
Yes.
over really fast.
Right.
So that's your twitch.
Yeah. Divor says I can't even spell Rumpelstiltskin on a good day. Yeah. All right.
World of Warcraft is pretty much all, to some extent, twitch combat. That you're basically trying to kill the monster before it kills you. And at least at the rating level and the tougher dungeons, it really is a challenge. You've got to, do the defensive moves at the right time. You've got to drink a healing potion at the right time, and so on.
There we get the dirt on King's Quest. It was in the remake backwards alphabet in the original. There is a note in the witch's hut saying sometimes it is wise to think backwards, but that's a terrible clue. I thought throwing the bridle on the snake was the worst puzzle in the original.
I think trying to go down the path on the mountain and you are likely to die because your interface was not very precise, and you would fall off the mountain and die. I think that's the worst puzzle.
And of course the
Least-
Monkey Island.
Yeah, Monkey Island made fun of that with
Yes.
you fall off the cliff and it's, oh no, you're dead. No, a few seconds later you bounce back onto the thing and it just says rubber tree.
Yes.
And Leisure Suit Larry made fun of it by having I think in Leisure Suit Larry 2 there's a really challenging pathway, and when you inevitably fall off at it, turns out there's no consequences to falling off, and the game actually keeps track of the number of times you fall off, and it like adds to your score.
Okay.
You get rewarded for falling off a lot.
Having to throw the boot at the cat in a limited time frame from the moment that you enter the screen was an unfair puzzle, I thought. Especially since if you didn't do it, you got stuck in the game later. Oh!
Yeah, that's called the walking, dead man walking.
Dead man walking.
Dead man walking is when you have something that you don't think to do early in the game, and especially if it appears to be optional or is non-obvious, and then later in the game it turns out you can't win because you can't get back there or
and
whatever.
there were some of that in Quest for Glory too, but we tried our best not to let that happen.
So one of the infamous
Before we even had the term.
yes,
Because we didn't even have the concept that this was possible.
and there were a few of those in Quest for Glory. We tried to explicitly prevent them. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a really fun game, but it's also a really frustrating one. Very difficult. And one of the things is early in the game, there's a pile of junk mail on your porch. If you do not pick up the pile of junk mail on the porch, then in a scene about half hour later, you get stuck.
Mm-hmm. Wait, but I think that only game that ever came out on console was King's Quest V. Did they do away with the parser to put games on the NES, and then none of the games were on the NES?
Close, yes. It turned out it was much more difficult than they realized to put games in consoles. I sort of spoiled them. My first job at Sierra was working on the SCI for the Atari ST and making sure the games all ran in the Atari ST. And the question is, do we recode the game for each platform? And that's really time consuming, and Atari ST is not going to be as profitable a platform as PC. So I did it. I changed the actual runtime system so that it could take the exact same source code for each game and run it on different computers and work as if you had written it for that computer.
So you created...
So I spoiled Sierra.
Yeah. You created the interpreter that they effectively used to bring SCI up to date to play on other computers.
Essentially, yeah. So in computer programming, Borland with Turbo Pascal had started that process of they had what they called the P machine, which could be Pascal machine or programming machine or something, that was a layer of the code that allowed most of the code of Turbo Pascal to be identical on any computer, and the P machine was the translator thing that so the low-level stuff translated it to that machine, and the P machine could interpret it because it was machine specific.
So put rock
other way
on
around.
geyser in King's Quest 1 was hard for me. Who knew how to spell geyser? That's a good point. Yes.
Oh, so I'd have a pretty easy time
You'd
with
have
that.
it. Yeah. You.
Now, Kaiser Sose is spelled the same way as Geyser, but with a K. But Kaiser in Hero U is spelled Kaiser, which is effectively king in German.
Yes. So we have multi-level puns. Yes.
So-
I have a work in process parser at the moment, so this is all very interesting. Good. I'm glad it's relevant. Webhead Spidey says, I was curious what your full vision was for the multiplayer aspect of Quest for Glory 5. How would multiplayer fully work, and what would you consider multiplayer aspects in your future games?
I think the answer to the second to last question is how would multiplayer fully work is wouldn't, or not very well.
Not very well. How would-
We didn't really know what we were doing.
Well, no, but our concept was of a multiplayer in a subset of it wasn't massively multiplayer, it was multiplayer. And effectively, you would go in a group, everybody would choose a character, whether you were playing Elsa or the hero or
Of course, everyone wants to be the hero. Or maybe everyone wants to be Elsa.
You might all want to be Elsa, or you could be the
Magnum Opus.
Magnum Opus. You could choose your character, and you'd be in a group with three different two other players, and you would go through the game doing it, doing the role playing, doing the combat system together as a group, and that was the level of multiplayer we were talking about.
Yeah, so multiplayer works well in terms of being able to talk to the other players,
Yes.
have conversations that are not controlled at all by the game, which of course can also lead to abuse. And it works well for combat situations.
Right, and so you could go into the arena and challenge those people, and you could have PvP effectively that way, or you could go out and have adventures together, and that was about the extent of it, and it wouldn't have the full story that the original 5 was, the single player 5 would have. But we never got there. We were learning right away that they would not have the multiplayer working anytime soon. So that's when I really went in to develop the solo game, thinking that would be shipping with it. And finally overtook it and did it.
So maybe the time for parsers is back. I mean, because ChatGPT and similar programs really are, they are natural language parsers, and they try to, take into account all the context and so on, and do various things. So yeah, building something like that into a game makes a whole lot of sense. And at that point, it's interesting. Now you could have microphone input, so you could speak your commands.
Right, that's the whole point. Yes, you have to do it. I mean, it makes no sense to go to typing again.
Yeah,
it has to be done with a voice. Hey Alexa, hey computer, this is what I'm trying, what is the right way to go to Poughkeepsie?
Yeah, and our phones will already do that. Siri on the iPhone is really stupid, but it's pleasant about it, and it occasionally gives me useful information. So I can ask it.
So that's the game I'd like to see how it could be done right. Yes, Divemore does room, including nearest character. That's interesting. Global game level and error level.
Okay, so SCI was object oriented, and so it was and so it was a message passing system, and there's a central loop that took all the input, but then it would pass it off to objects to handle, and so it made total sense in that to actually hand it to the character first. You could also, in the room, you're basically breaking the object-oriented metaphor a little bit, but it makes sense, do it at the room level and then have the room say, okay, let's see if any of these characters can handle it. So you can still do it with message passing by giving it to the room and then having the room try various objects and people in the room.
It was Space Quest that had the geyser. Okay, makes more sense. Yeah. Okay. But let's see. The mystery of things out there being possibly discoverable is part of the magic. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that is a very important thing. Magic, the magic of not knowing, the magic of discovery, is really, a really high level of why we play these things. The surprise, the it's why you can't play, D&D after all these years. You can't.
Yeah, if you go back and play a first level character, it's not the same as when you first started the
The
game.
magic's kind of gone because
Yeah.
you've been through all that experience.
You can never
Likewise with
step in the same river
with
place.
World of Warcraft, you can't play that character that you just started out again and still have that sense of wonder that you're going into this world of possibilities. And the wonder of possibilities is just really special.
Yeah, we just started playing World of Warcraft last night with a friend who played it 17 years ago. And it was kind of painful watching the difficulty that he was having playing the game at all. We don't remember how hard it is to start out. I was going to say on parsers, and ties in with what Deavor was saying, is that the problem with the parser is the defaults. When it falls through all of your handling and nobody has said, I'm going to handle this phrase, and then you have to give a generic like, I don't understand that, or try saying that a different way, or
And
huh?
boy, yeah. That,
And that really ruins immersion in the game.
Yep. And you'll hit your head against that in a lot of games.
And a lot of times I read reviews and say that, well, the parser wasn't good in this game. That isn't what it is at all. The parser's fine. It's the amount of handling that the game writers and programmers have put in that uses the parser. So the parser might be able to understand any sentence ever spoken, but that doesn't do any good if the game hasn't put in handling for that sentence.
Yeah. The Quest for Glory 2 remake was very fun with the hybrid system, where, as I recall, they had some silly clowns hidden in the parser exclusive inputs.
Okay, yes, with the AGDI or whatever they called
did
it.
a lot of work. They really tried to make that.
The artwork in that game is really nice. They did a great job on that. They put a lot of thought into that. One of the things at the very last minute when we were developing Quest for Glory 2, we had a fun little thing that Brian Hughes had gotten together with Jerry Moore and added an extra scene to the game that was the
Easter egg.
an Easter egg scene, the Saurus repair shop. And it was a car repair shop, and had some really fun stuff in it. At the last second, we said, there's nowhere in any of the floppies we can fit that. The game is so huge and it's out of space that we would have had to add like 2 more floppies in order to fit it in. The budget wouldn't allow that. So we cut that at the last second, and the HEDI people went back and asked me about that. I put them in contact with Brian. He had some of his old notes and maybe assets from when he had done that, and shared it with them, and then they put the Saurus repair shop back into the game. So, yay.
Society today wouldn't tolerate a parser. Too much work / thinking. It was a beautiful thing of its time. Maybe, yes. I mean, people are still making parser games, but they're not that hugely popular.
Yeah, so most media is passive. Okay, so you go to Netflix or YouTube or whatever and you watch a video, that's passive. Gaming is active, where you are constantly putting in inputs that affect your game experience. But most of the people playing games now want that to be a visceral, immersive experience, and they don't want to take the time out to have to construct sentences and stuff. Now, obviously, if you're talking with other players, like World of Warcraft does not have voice input for talking to other players, so you have to type it in.
Well, you did it at one
And
point.
what we discovered, at least what I discovered, is when we were first introduced by a friend of Lori's to and a fan to World of Warcraft, is she presented it to us as the ultimate role-playing game. And we discovered that, okay, yeah, their idea of role-playing was sitting around Stormwind and what's this?
Goldside.
Goldshire.
Yeah.
And just basically chatting with other people. And so I tried that, and it was a lot of fun. up to about level 10 or 15 or 20. And at that point, the gameplay, the amount of commands you had, keeps growing as you get higher level. They give you more things you can do. And the game became much more immersive to the point where you had actually really difficult fights and danger. And suddenly, and there was so much to do that I didn't have time for conversational players anymore. So that was really fun for a while, and the more you get into the game, the less you do of it.
ChatGPT returns a data based on what is likely to be the next word and sentence in a statement. So the models can have some pretty funky return data and sometimes hard to wrangle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Markov chain is what that's called. So they basically have a string of pearls that each word on the chain is a string of pearls. And it is predictive. What is most likely to be next, and then you're constantly altering the state as it goes to the next one, then it predicts what's coming next.
Right. In this case, though, you'd want to match the user input to the most appropriate pre-planned function. And
that would be sort of like our askabouts, yeah. If there's a person in the room, you're probably having a conversation with the person. So if you just said, hi there, without saying Abdullah, hi there, it would figure out there's another person there. Hi there is a greeting you would make to a person, and therefore the context is conversation. So you could have a natural conversation that would not involve having to say, Abdullah says. or
Cephas Squid says, yes, it is a non-trivial problem because you are after meaning in statements. Yes. I actually like the stair quests. There's so little execution in those games already. It's nice to mix it up, and you can always save.
Yeah, so that is actually Stair Quest is a game that is a kind of a parody of those, falling off cliffs and stuff in King's Quest. The entire game is going up and down stairs.
Okay. Some Dead Men, I think, is okay. In Conquest of the Longbow, it's the only game that only lets you live for like a day before it basically tells you you're dead. It depends on the context. Death should always be something that you could avoid, is what our philosophy is. Yes.
Yeah. So let's say that
the opposite.
Somewhere in the game you can find a key, and then you get arrested unexpectedly, but you can get out because you have the key. But if you hadn't found that key, you're screwed. Unless the game also gives you another alternative that maybe there's a more challenging way to get out.
Or you don't get arrested until after you find the key.
Yeah.
Which is the inverse way of design, which is really very cool when you suddenly get the aha.
But it's so weird to the players because, there was the thing, I think it was Ron Gilbert in his Why Adventure Games Suck article that he talked about Indiana Jones. If you're doing an Indiana Jones game where you've got his bullwhip and you've got his hat.
And then the door coming down in between.
Yeah, so that basically you are, diving through a door just before it closes and crushes you to death, and your hat falls off. And so now you can use your bullwhip to snag the hat and bring it through just in time. And so he says the way that he would program that is make it very relaxed timing. You can maybe have up to 10 seconds.
Yes, the obvious way to do it is to give them that the door is coming down. You have to flick your bullwhip just in time, or else you're going to get crushed.
Yeah, but nobody wants to fail. So what you do instead is you make it so that however fast or slow a player is, it feels like the player did that just barely in time.
Yes, so that once the hat is on the side with the Indy, the door slams shut just that instant to give you that feel.
So that's Lori's thing with the key, is that basically if you set it up so that the game does not put you in the situation of being arrested until you have the key, then to the player that feels like this was a totally random event, and thank God I have this key.
Yeah. Yes, so Skip said they had Dead Man walking in Conquest for Camelot to get out of the catacombs. Well, then there was the King's Quest one, where you had to actually die to map the way
Oh, yeah,
across
the
that
desert.
desert.
Yeah, King's Quest 4, I believe it was, with Rosella. There's a desert you need to cross, and I think it was 5.
I'm sure somebody will tell us. Since
Yep.
we didn't.
And basically, you only have a limited amount of water and time and so on. So that basically, you're supposed to make a map as you go, and you only get so far through it, then you die, and then next time you know not to follow the bad paths.
Right. You learn the way across through trial and error, and you keep making errors.
So when Ron Gilbert debated Laurie on death in adventure games, he said, basically that totally bringing up that, restart, quit, restore, restart, quit interface completely pulls you out of the fantasy of the game and ruins it for you. So what he would do is basically make it so that you feel like you're constantly running out of water, but something happens, it rains or something, and you can catch the rain.
That would be perfectly reasonable.
Something to let you extend your time in there if it's taking you too long.
Buck Rogers says a modern parser would help with autocorrect or squiggles.
What's a squiggle?
I'm not sure. Game hints on important things to ask could also be done too. Still retain some parser mystery without going all the way back to 1989, okay? Yes. I was playing a game that does the predictive text like on phones. That might work with parsers too. And it would be fun to see an advanced parser. I doubt many at this point would understand why it's so awesome and it didn't be ignored. Yes.
I mean, we have advanced parsers. I mean, if I say, hey Siri, tell me about the Quest for Glory games. And
From Wikipedia, Quest for Glory is a series of hybrid adventure role-playing video games, which were designed by Corey and Lori Ann Cole.
Oh, that was nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
So, I mean, she has just a vast amount of context. I gave a pretty arbitrary sentence, tell me about, and she handled it.
Yep.
She.
That is an advanced parser.
So we have them, and they have a voice.
Multiplayer experience not rated. I wonder why it's not rated. Like trying to play a game of World of Warcraft and doing PvP, you get conversations can be very
Or just being in a city, the famous infamous Barons chat.
Yes.
That people are just randomly.
It can't predict what players will say and do in games. And once you have multiplayer, you can't rate a game because it's going to get dirty in a lot of places. Yes. Interactive fiction has never truly died. It just has become very niche. Yes. Or niche. I always pronounced it niche.
I pronounce it niche, but I think niche is the right word.
No, they're both.
Is it niche?
They're both correct.
It's a niche, okay.
Yeah. Talking to a game for 3 hours is kind of exhausting, though. I suppose.
It is, but so is typing.
Yes, typing is too, yes. I think the PlayStation 5 has a microphone on the controller, but I don't think the Xbox or Nintendo has a built-in mic. That's interesting, yes. That does limit what games can be designed for.
And the Xbox is designed to be largely compatible with Windows, so that people can do Windows games and Xbox games. And so if you have a major feature that doesn't work in the Xbox, people aren't going to do it. And of course, Windows, only some people have microphones.
Right. But any gamer will have a microphone.
Phones, tablets, and laptops do have the microphone built into the device, though.
Yeah. And voice plus keyboard combo would be fun. I prefer to type instead of talk to my game between the two options. Wait, I know that the Xbox Kinect has a built-in microphone, but I don't think that that Microsoft still sells the Kinect. Oh, well, My favorite parser error message.
Hang on, I was just going to say about phones that phones used to be all about voice, that you would call up people and talk to them, and now that's frowned upon. Most conversations in your phone are actually done by text.
Text, yes, which is my preferred way of communicating.
Which is so retro when you think about it.
Let's see. My favorite parser error message in Quest for Glory 3 is where it goes, "That's interesting." Because usually I agreed. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have clicked on it. So I felt acknowledged anyway. Okay.
Yeah, one of the famous ones from, I think it was Zork, is if you typed, foo, it would say, "Well, foo, bar and bletch to you, too."
Yeah.
And people were like, "Oh, there's a person back there."
I never had a problem with parsers from King's Quest 1 until the end with King's Quest 4. I definitely had a pile of notes in my beginning years on how to spell words. As I was 4 years old, though, Dad helped. Jeez. Wow, I'm
Yeah, my brother played Quest for Glory with his daughter sitting in his lap.
Yes, I guess the end would have
She
been
was like 4.
Quest for Glory 2. Probably the last Sierra parser release, yeah. Oh, and Enchantress Aziza showed up.
Hi, Enchantress Aziza.
Welcome. We're glad to see you here.
So, Quest for Glory 2, why was it the last Sierra Parser release? So we were actually developing Quest for Glory 2 in parallel with King's Quest 5 and Space Quest 3, I guess it was. And those were both 256 color VGA games with no parser and with point-and-click interface. And fairly, about halfway through the project, management called us in and said, are you going to have the game done in time for this fall? And we have a problem, and the problem is that, we have to, their big sales time is the fall, and it doesn't look like King's Quest is going to be ready in time. And so they basically made the executive decision that we would continue on using the parser and typed interface and 16-color graphics. Whereas we could have said, okay, we will cancel the game for now. We'll help out, put our team on to King's Quest to get it finished in time for Christmas. And that's exactly what Mark and Scott did with Space Quest. Is they actually helped out with King's Quest 5, and they delayed their Space Quest till like March.
Whereas our theory was that it would mean we were not competing with
against King's Quest.
And that since they needed a product for Christmas, that would mean we'd get a little more support from Sierra for pushing our game. And
besides, we had a continuity issue already going from Heroes Quest to Quest for Glory.
Yes.
So that, we wanted to be out as soon as possible.
Yep.
Well, a lot of that turned out to be short-sighted, but we didn't know.
Yep.
And then we got really screwed over because what they did is put everybody else in the company on King's Quest, and they managed to ship it only a few weeks after Quest for Glory 2, and that meant that the very last parser 16-color game was up against the very first point-and-click, state-of-the-art 256-color game, and we did not look good in comparison.
Uh-huh. And Buck Rogers says, these AI algorithms are good enough that human speech is relatively primitive to predict when your data set is to train on the internet. An AI parser would probably make Swiss cheese out of the average person's vocabulary. Yeah, well, maybe. Oh, wow, it's the Aziza. And yes, she subscribed for 17 months with Prime. Thank you very much.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah. Quote, death should always be something that you can avoid, unquote. I think seeing the solution only from dying is very interesting. It depends on how the player views dying. Some audiences are more excited by the possibility of death, and there you have it.
That's the key phrase.
That was the reason I had a debate with Ron Gilbert at that Game Developers Conference, is I said it's the possibility of death that brings the game to the next level of enjoyment. It brings that intenseness that you get from knowing you might make a mistake that brings you and push you into the game even further, because it's not an intellectual discussion anymore. It's not just a puzzle solving thing. It feels like it's important viscerally.
But we tried to do it in a way that death was unlikely, that you would have to make a mistake or be very unlucky to die.
Yes. Because nobody likes to die.
And nobody actually likes to die. But, but the chance you might be able to die, and especially if we make the death funny.
Right. I agreed with Ron Gilbert with all the points he made. I just said that in addition to those points of why death is bad, it can be good for a whole different reason, for a whole different level of excitement and fun. And roguelike is a whole genre for a reason, yeah. King's Quest 5 was the desert. Okay. Your desert in Quest for Glory 2 was way better. Yes. The poisonous desert.
You can get totally lost in the
Yes,
desert in
you
Quest for Glory
can.
2.
We have
There's only a few interesting places in
yes,
it. and-
right. And it's infinite, and that's kind of dumb, except it wasn't totally infinite, you know.
Yeah, people
We-
found ways to break it and get
Yes.
from one city to the other.
Yeah. One of the interesting versions of this concept is the randomizer. People hack into games like Legend of Zelda. They have to make sure precondition to puzzles exist so that it is randomization plus internal logic. Well, it's a very complicated thing.
Yeah, one of the types of puzzles that a lot of games have is that you've got essentially a keypad and a door, and you're trying to come up with the combination to get in. Or you've got a series of buttons to press. And I've seen several games where that's completely randomized. And so you basically have to trial and error, try out all the combinations until you get the right one. World of Warcraft has some chess that work that way. And we would prefer to do something that, a prisoner has written the key code on the back of his key card, or the wall of his cell, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that you come across that either before or after you come across the puzzle.
Okay. Life-giving nectar, water, nectar of the gods, life-giving water, nectar of the gods. And Divor says, on the other hand, to Ron Gilbert, the lack of real stakes that can't die also makes itself feel very gamey. It's true. But then...
And this is why...
game.
And this is why cartoony games like Monkey Island and Leisure Suit Larry work better. So if we're trying to make the game feel realistic, like Christy was doing with Camelot and Longbow, then you want players to feel immersed that it could really happen.
And you want consequences to actions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's thing. And Derek Page says respect for Siri. Yep. And David TKI says, I do like my games with niches and cheese. I was taught in school that niche is niche. So niches and cheese actually works better, yes.
Niche and cheese.
I like how Nintendo handles multiplayer. They generally don't let 12-year-olds call you. Yes. At 41, that's nice to avoid. Yeah, well, you can in World of Warcraft. You can have it bleep out.
Yeah, there's a filter you can turn on or off.
Yes. Quote, in modern English, you can pronounce niche as niche or niche. In the past, you would have pronounced the word niche traditionally. The Gaelic pronunciation, British
I think it's Gaelic.
British English niche has gained popularity over the past decades. Now American dictionaries accept both versions. Thank you very much, unquote. I had to use niche for ecology. Oh, yeah.
Tend to use, yeah.
Yes, and niche for most everything else. Well, Richard Aronson, our friend and co-designer at Sierra, has had his daughter be a super speller and was in the spelling bee for the county and things like that. And she was undone by the word niche because she'd never heard niche. She only heard it as niche, and it so pissed her and her father off that they did not pronounce it properly.
So when they tested her, they pronounced it niche?
Yes. And so she didn't get it. That's so we will always remember that niche and niche. Yes.
At least you will. I never heard that story. Thank you.
Oh, I always will remember it. I think people also tend to describe esoteric as niche and organisms' role in the economy as niche. Yeah. Interesting. It was my biology teacher who taught us that niche is pronounced niche. Interesting too. Yeah. And Marius says, good morning.
I learned it as niche.
I learned it as niche too. So, but then again, we read it. That's
Yes.
how we learned
Oh,
it.
that's true. I also pronounced melancholy as melancholy
Yeah. So yes.
because I learned it by reading.
Yeah. I was playing a new adventure game where they gave you clues every time you died, and it would autosave before every death and then reload. So actually dying was part of the game. Like that Netflix show, Russian Doll. That is interesting.
So I was talking with a friend about rations, and I used the word victuals, and she was like, "What?
Victuals.
What are you talking
Yes,
about?"
yes,
And I spelled it for, "Oh, that's vittles." You know, why are you pronouncing victuals?
Vittles? Where do you get vittles?
Where do you get vittles from a word that's spelled victual?
Yeah. On the subject of deaths, I learned how to do a Quest for Glory EGA all death messages speedrun, and it's going to be included in the schedule for the Big Bad Gameathon. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Did you go this one from Sweet Potato? The game where they gave clues every time you died?
Yeah, I just did.
Yeah, that was that's a really interesting concept.
I liked
Making
Russian
death
Doll.
part of the
It was
game.
very interesting too as a movie. Trial by fire and error. Yes. I think Snowy said he was looking into routing that for Cuddle.
Cuddle. Conquest of the Longbow?
No.
Cave of the... I had someone refer to a job opening and say that they're really looking for someone who is passionate about the 3 C's. So I said, I wonder what that is. So I looked up the 3 C's, and the first hit was in psychology, the 3 C's are don't care, can't do anything about it, and something else. I said, I don't think that's the one he's talking about.
Some caveats on the version 1.0 and in DOSBox. Some deaths are exclusive to 1.2, and some are unreachable in DOSBox, but fixed in Scum VM. Interesting. Yeah, that'll mess you up. And Benzomin says, well, in Dutch, we are forced to say niche, because otherwise it would be with the phlegm like... Yes, Nick.
The Kniggets, French,
and it was
silly French Kniggets.
It is long. Okay, good. Yes. And you got to get that good phlegm.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Yeah. Great sounds.
Germans pride themselves on very precise vowel sounds. It is not O, it's O.
Yes. Routing all death routes for Longbow. Wow. Okay. Civilian, Conservation, and Core.
Yeah, there was competence, confidence, and something else was used in management. And I can't remember. I gave him a response that came up with all the different things C could stand for that actually were relevant to games.
Coding.
Oh, I didn't come up with that one.
Okay. Let's see. Did you create Conquest of Camelot as well? No, that was Christy Marks, and she did Longbow and she did Camelot, and she was doing it concurrent to when we were doing the games. What did you try to do? Find it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will while you keep talking.
Okay. Let's see. Well, I need to scroll down there.
Here we go. Warren Spector.
Oh, Warren Spector.
Yes, Warren Spector
Okay.
announced the new project he's working on called Argos. I forget the subtitle of it. It's Argos something : Argos Riders on the Storm.
Okay.
It's a new game that they're developing with Joel McGinnis, and Joel was the one that listed the job listing, and I just saw myself here a second ago.
Oh well.
Most relevant? I'm not the most relevant?
You're not the most relevant commenting on this thing. Warren Spector is, of course, who is he? I mean, for those people.
Warren Spector is a thief, and he's done lots of stuff with
Thief is a game.
the game Thief.
Okay, fine.
View full profile of Warren Spector. He is the chief creative officer and creative director at
Yeah.
Other Side Entertainment.
Yeah, but what was his resume? I thought it was more than that.
Oh, it's lots of stuff.
It's
yeah.
huge, yes. He's definitely, and he's looking for a senior game designer if you want to go in for that. Let's see.
Somebody in here, they should list it.
I love that for several
credits.
reasons. They don't say the modern word computer in French because it sounds like a very dirty curse. Yes. Like chat GTP in French is not really working. I mean, in Dutch, I did see lots of cursing right now because that in Dutch means the most vulgar version of a Johnson. Okay.
So my thought for a multiplayer game is that the 3 C's should be
We have a
customers, community,
piece of crap there.
caring, and maybe connection.
That's nice, yeah.
Okay, how do I do this?
And you always have to figure it
I
out.
think I have to /ban.
Yeah. And I have accidentally said many dirty things in French because they sounded clean in my head. It really is the language of love. Ha ha. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, indeed. Or at least the language
Language
of
of sex.
something. Yeah. Yes. You should be able to
Language of
ban by
seafood.
clicking on the name. Oh, thank you.
I haven't been able to do that, which is a problem, of course, if they spell their name weird. But
Yes.
I usually banned it by doing a /ban.
Hi, Valiant Cheese. Welcome. And Enchantress Aziza said, there's a scene in Henry IV,
Right, fourth.
Shakespeare play about a French woman learning to speak English. The woman pointed to her foot and asked what word was, and her friend said, she must never say that word.
Foot.
I see.
I don't know
Play
that.
on words.
See, I don't know that word in French, so
Yeah.
I don't mind saying it.
Yes, right. Henry IV. Yeah, I
Foot.
Yes, it's true. My French teacher had a very fun story about talking about preservatives in her food, which meant something very much funnier in French. It's the F word. Okay, great.
Well, German, the verb for a sexual thing is ficken.
Well, and it just goes to show
And it's very
that
similar.
people have been making puns about language and different words in different languages forever. And Shakespeare was not the first to do puns in English and French. Yes, Henry the
In
Fifth.
Latin, there was Latin
Yes.
puns in monasteries
Oh, gods,
from
yes.
hundreds of years ago. Many hundreds of years ago.
Preservative is a male contraceptive in French. Okay. It's probably not pronounced.
Okay, so looking at the 3 C's, I found the 3 C's of addiction recovery is I didn't cause it, I can't cure it, I can't control it. I said, I've certainly heard all those in game development, but they're not necessarily the ones you want to hear. I said, call it the Han Solo rule of why games always run late and over budget. Connection, confidence, and choice was something. And Lifehack says the 3 C's are choices, chances, and changes. And those are pretty cool in gaming. So I think connection, confidence, choice, commitment, community, customers, and caring.
There we go. It's all about games.
And choice. It's all about choice.
Yeah.
Oh, I said that was one of them.
Right. And I know what word you mean. Haha. Preservatives is French for preservative. Yes, my French teacher had a story where she said, "I'm excited to see the Eiffel Tower," except she said a different version of excited, and people thought she was attracted to buildings. Okay.
Well, someone the Eiffel Tower does have kind of a phallic construction.
Yes,
so
and
it's
it is a condom.
We've gone afield here.
Well, yes, but we're doing language.
It is condom specifically.
Yes.
The
Yes.
preservatives.
And that sort of makes sense. So, yeah.
Well, we got the thing now with banning a certain over the counter by the mail abortion drug.
That is
in the US.
not an abortion. It's really a...
And there are a lot of the people that want to ban abortion also want to ban contraceptives.
Yes.
Or at least not make them available to teenagers. So they put the two together and they basically say, we want our teenagers to be pregnant. And I think if they thought it through, they might decide that maybe that's not optimal.
Oh, well. A lot of people sure are jerks. Well, there's that. Yes. We will not argue that one. Except for our community, of course, which we are not jerks.
Now, throughout history, I mean, it has not been uncommon for 13-year-old girls to have babies. So maybe we just have to say, well, that's natural.
Well, it is, but not necessarily optimal. Yes, I feel that our state is legally imploding. It's it's interesting times. Let's put it this way: there are times when it has been fairly straightforward, and we haven't been so interesting. But this is definitely interesting times. Yes. I think that's part of what they want is to control other people's sexuality and sexual activity. Yeah. Well, I think control is the key there. They want to control. Yes. Don't
They wanna
curse me with
I mean,
interesting times. Well, I didn't have to curse you. We're all cursed with it, yes.
And back hundreds of years when there were 12-year, I think there's still 12-year-old brides. You just don't hear about them all the time.
Yeah, well, it depends on where you are.
I mean,
too.
certainly when, when Lori and I were growing up, some girls just didn't show up for school after a vacation or whatever, and we never heard what happened to them. But it turns out a lot of high school girls get pregnant and they just don't go back to school.
Yeah, well, that was that. Yeah, I know a lot of these people, they want nobody to have sex unless they're married. Well, they want nobody to have sex unless it's them. Really. Yeah, those who claim to be pro-life are only pro-birth. It's crazy. It is crazy because they certainly aren't pro-life because we would have universal.
They don't want it to,
universal medicine.
Yeah, so I was trying to
take care of
think,
things, yeah.
basically, if you make abortion entirely illegal, then that gives consequences to the women. So what do you do to balance that out? So there's consequences for everyone. And I said, okay, well, for men, clearly, if you're responsible for an unwanted child, then you should have to basically pay $10,000 a year out of whatever you earn for the next 20 years for upbringing for the child.
10,000 is too low.
Well, 10,000 is okay for upbringing for a child, but it'll have to scale with inflation.
I see.
So,
I'm not sure. Aziza says she works in OB/GYN.
And if you have 5 unwanted children, that's $50,000 a year you're paying.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So yeah, it could get pretty high.
It's definitely interesting times. My hospital is 100% supportive, and we have plans for those coming out of state to get the care they need. Good for you, yes. And then we've got the states that are looking to make sure that doesn't happen.
But
It's
how
really
ridiculous
scary.
is it that in the 21st century that we should be in that situation
Yes.
where people have to fly 1,000 miles or something in order to get health care?
Well, we
That's
don't know.
ridiculous!
Unless it's them. Yep, weird how often it happens to be moral when oneself does it, yes. There's a lot to unpack that I think ends up reflecting poorly on people with those kind of attitudes. Yeah. Coming from out of state is terrifying, That is just awful.
I mean, I hate to go in for... Lori won't go into the doctor unless she absolutely has to. And I don't do it very often, so the idea of having to travel for, what should be an outpatient surgery, just ridiculous.
And our political leaders gave protection to our docs for performing women's health care. That's important too, because that'll be the next thing they go for.
They already do.
Yes,
yeah.
the insurance companies.
The doctors
That'll
and
be
nurses.
next. They'll be going for and trying to get them suing
To not
for
cover it.
malpractice
Yes.
if you perform an abortion.
Some states have that
Yes,
codified in law that they would.
The same people don't believe in gay marriage. Yes, right. Yeah.
Which is a good way to prevent birth.
Yes. Yeah. Gay marriage is very good at preventing, pregnancies.
Well, it's funny because in the 60s and 70s, we were hearing about zero population growth and that the world was on a collision course to disaster because there were just too many people and that very soon there would not be enough food and so on, and was really encouraging, less fertility.
Yeah.
And so now they're saying, oh, wait a second, we don't have enough young people to pay for our retirement. So we need more young workers. We need more young workers paying into the system.
But if they're intelligent and they've been trained they're in college, we don't want those people there. We want them poor.
And workers, but at the same time, they don't want immigrants who generally end up with those lower status jobs. So
there's no winning here.
Yeah.
Pro-life, but not pro a home for foster children. They just want uneducated masses to keep voting for them. Yes. And Ziza says, it's so ridiculous I can't even spell. It makes me so mad. And yes, we'll all go with that. We're all furious about what's going on here. And
well, I mean, I'm sure some of the people here probably think that, I would imagine that out of however many people we have online, that there are probably a few of you who think that abortion is just the most horrible thing in the world. And we have fans. I have a discussion with fans that basically say it's just murder. It is awful, it is evil, and we don't actually disagree that much. Okay,
It's terrible. It's
women do not want to have abortions.
No, that's just it. It's not something that women do because they like it.
Yeah, it's not fun to constantly get pregnant and then get it aborted and
Yeah,
get pregnant
God,
again.
that's
No,
awful.
no woman wants that.
So we all agree with that line. Yeah.
But once you're in a situation that's untenable, you got to do something about it.
Yes. And how about those that don't have the dollars to travel for health care? Well, yeah, exactly. And some states wanted to put docs in jail. Yes, there's that too. So there's so much questionable stuff to unpack, yes. And for performing.
Yeah, 30 years ago, the talk was all about how blacks and other minorities, people living in the inner city, were having child after child in order to benefit for welfare payments and
Yeah,
such.
so it's all about the welfare.
And
thing.
therefore that they were soon going to overtake the white population because...
Yes, that scared that group, yes.
And of course, Latinos, many of them are Catholic, and Catholic Church was totally against
Yes,
birth
believed
control.
in big families. So,
Yep.
so therefore, at that point, that was before the anti-abortion movement. And so they didn't have a problem with that at that point. But when it was, when it affected their, when they needed their control and they needed a rallying point, then that's when these things, they're mostly political points of trying to get people to be afraid and follow them, yes. Also, there's fine line between doctors' activities legal and doctors' activity puts them in jail will make conservative provider decisions that will just kill people to protect their own license. Yes.
Yeah, Valiant Cheese. Yes, I think that was about the 90s. So I did stop to think before I give a number of decades, but it's not precise. I mean, it's gone on for decades.
Yeah, well, overpopulation. Oh, the
It was,
eugenics are here. Yes. Right.
In the 30s and 40s, 1930s and 40s and 50s, it was the Irish problem,
Yes.
and the Irish were coming in and breeding like mad, or so people said.
Yes. Makes things even harder for women who are already going through that situation. That's absolutely deplorable. We'll all think, and abortion is very bad. Which is, I am grateful to be a man and will never have to get pregnant. I don't think I would.
But you might have some consequences when you get someone else pregnant.
Yeah, and I don't think I should decide on anybody else's behalf. Yes, exactly.
Yay.
I was it a panic in the 90s? Okay, that was your thing.
Yep.
Yes. It's insane to remember that my dad was alive during segregation. Things were different not that all long ago. Yeah, well, we were alive.
Guess what? You're still alive during segregation.
I was alive in the time when I could not own a credit card because I was a woman.
You were too young at that point to own a credit card anyway, but
well,
by the time you were an adult, you
yes,
could own a credit card.
right? Because things had changed, and I could not wear pants to school because you had to wear skirts.
And our mothers were alive in a time where women could not legally vote.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, at least there is progress, yes. A lot of us think the position has become too extreme. Bill Clinton said abortions should be legal but rare. What happened to that? The strain from that lost a lot of people, but no one seemed to see it. Well, it's all about, if you think of a political group, a certain political group that we won't name, it needs to have a unifying theme like fear to keep its clientele together, whether it's a political group like a church or a political group like something that runs our country half the time. They need to have enemies because enemies unite, and your enemies could be Jews. Your enemies could be blacks. Your enemies could be this abstract thing of saving the children.
Could be rich people.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But it could also be
minorities.
Yeah, immigrants of any sort.
Anything that isn't, like you, and that helps to.
And in fact, it could be poor people in general because you figure that poor people, black, white, or purple, may come and try to take away your stuff.
Yeah.
And poor is anyone who has less money than you.
Yeah.
So you might not be rich, but
yeah, we always have somebody to look down.
Have to always have somebody to look down. Yeah.
In the current political climate, all we can do is keep on laughing. Yeah. My
Doesn't help much.
grandfather fought in World War II. We are less than 1 human lifetime away from the Nazis, yes, and less than 2 human lifetimes away from slavery. This stuff is really recent, yes, and it's,
At least in the U.S. I mean, Europe got rid of it.
well, yes, but it was still
while
existing
we-
around. And if we do this as humans rather than countries,
Yes.
then we are,
Still awfully close to it.
awfully close for it. Yes. Let's see. We just did.
I never expected to show up at this channel.
I know. I'm sorry.
To an abortion
we did-
debate, and I don't think we have an abortion debate because so far I have not seen very many people brave enough to tell us that we're all going to hell.
Yes. Yes. For reference, my dad is in his 60s. Yes, you are not talking to a cohort. And for reference, we're in our 60s. You're
Yeah.
not talking to the the end of the year. I feel we won't reach an end to the ridiculousness of the pro-life until they reach the point where women should be jailed for having miscarriages, which they will. Yes, and they have been. Texas, there were several women that have been
Jailed for having miscarriages
because
they said that they induced it.
yes, they said that had to have been an abortion, and therefore they were
And
jailed.
it's completely unprovable.
Yes.
You don't find out how common miscarriages are until you or someone close to you has one. Lori had a couple of miscarriages and suddenly became one miscarriage, well, maybe a second one.
No, just one.
Just one, and suddenly became a member of the community.
Yes.
And found out that every other woman that she worked with had a miscarriage at some point.
Yes, it's very, very common. It's actually quote unquote natural. People have miscarriages, and when you can be jailed for miscarriages, it's just a war against women at that point. Yes, yes. Held a message for reason: sexuality, sex, or gender. Allow it to post. Yes, let's see. I do wonder about the Taliban is our enemy because they want to kill gay people and take away all women's rights. Doesn't it all describe a group in the United States? Yeah. What do you know?
I'm going to allow this post, yes.
I guess so.
It had the phrase "kill gay people," which made it banned.
Oh, is that what it was saying?
Yes,
Okay,
it had a
fine, I didn't
sub-phrase. The
understand.
Taliban wants to kill gay people is the context.
Yeah,
but,
okay, fine.
But our Discord automatically spots kill gay people in there, and somebody saying we should all kill gay people is not
yes.
permitted discussion
Right, we
on
don't want that discussion too particularly.
on
yes,
Twitch.
Yeah. And one leader of that group was baiting an OBYJ obstetrician during
Nurse or doctor who delivered babies.
Would you abort a live third trimester fetus? She tried to tell him that never happens and that he would not take that for an answer.
It's extremely rare. And if it does happen...
the key is live.
Yes, live, yes. Then the baby the fetus is actually already dead.
Yeah, all right. In a more abstract sense, it's pretty easy for me to draw the conclusion that people who don't want to be parents are generally not going to be able to provide a kid with a good upbringing. What do you know? There's another common sense thing, yes.
Yeah, there was. We just heard about the thing with Ron DeSantis. He made a statement that was based on an incident in Minnesota.
He said it was Florida. He had to do the quote.
He said Florida,
Yes,
but the actual incident was in Minnesota, and it was a woman that tried to have an abortion.
No, well, the woman is a woman who says her mother tried to abort her, and her grandmother rescued her as she, and took her to the hospital and saved her life, and so it's anti-abortionist.
And we say, well, that's anti.
Illegal abortions, because that is still illegal.
Well, and without the abortion, I mean, it's anyone who has a baby they don't want, and that their grandmother has to bail them out because they can't raise the child or they don't want to raise the child, and in many cases, it's not safe for them to raise it.
Yeah. The modern anti-abortion argument came from groups who were pro-segregation but lost that debate and needed a new cause to jump on.
The war on drugs was started out as anti-black, and Nixon discovered that a lot of black people used marijuana, so
That's why we
his
had
dog
the-
whistle became the war on drugs,
Yes.
which is really a war on blacks.
Yes, and Bleat Mop gives the very depressing statistic that 50% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. And yes, and it's hard on everybody.
But that's not a number you hear normally.
No.
Most people think that miscarriages are rare. They're not. They're extremely common.
If holding morally grounded, conscionable positions that champion things like bodily autonomy means you go to hell, then I think that's a mark in hell's favor. Yeah, well.
Yeah, it was all the good, so from Good Omens, there was, all the best musicians are in hell.
Yes, and the only thing in heaven is
Sound of Music.
Yes.
Oh, years are alive.
We can reduce the
I like
number
the Sound of
of
Music
abortion
personally, but
by reducing the number of unwanted pregnancy by supporting sex ed and free contraception.
yeah, that's the weird thing is finding that the very. I have apparently done an ad permitted term kill gay people.
Okay.
So please nobody else say that in a serious way.
Yes, let's not have that. We just
We'll-
got flagged effectively. Yes.
We'll fan you very quickly. We'll ban you very quickly. Fan you? I could use fanning.
Fanning. Yes. I wonder about this. The Taliban is our enemy because they want to kill gay people and take away all the humans. Okay, we went through that one, but doesn't that? Yeah, let's see. We've scrolled up. Let's see. I have to jet, but I'm glad I came in at a good time. I like to talk about these important issues. Yes, indeed, I think. My kids just want to play Roblox bowling. I'll be in next time. Take care. Thank you so much. We'll, it is important things, yes. I don't know these statistics. Does that include or exclude legal abortions? Probably excludes them. Yes, and what kills me is
Wait. What's illegal and what's not?
probably the abortions. That the thing on miscarriage.
No, miscarriage probably does not include them, I'm
Yes,
sure.
yeah. And what kills me is how aborting an ectopic pregnancy would be a crime. Yes, an ectopic
Pregnancy is unviable. If not aborted, will kill the mother. There's no way around it. And, but it's a crime.
Yes.
And that's so effectively what they're saying is we're putting you under a death sentence for the crime of having gotten pregnant and being unlucky.
And being very unlike, yes, of course you don't. It's not the narrative you're fed with in the culture of death. This is what I read. Yeah. Oh, and you can delete my content if you need to. Yeah, that's okay. Let's see. Arlene Sorkin. I don't know Arlene Sorkin by name. So thanks, and also I don't live in the U.S. Thank you. Yes, that is a big advantage.
Where's Arlene Sorkin?
At the last one by Rich. Rich made that comment. So, at any rate, well, that was an interesting side topic that we don't normally go into. I hope.
No, we're very passionate about it. And basically, to us, it is so obvious that one of the political parties in the U.S. has its head buried in the sand. They don't believe in climate change. They don't believe in vaccination and masking stuff as a way of preventing spreading illnesses. They think that abortion should be absolutely illegal with no exceptions. And to us, these are just uncaring, unfeeling, and dumb positions.
Yeah,
and yet we know a lot of people that happen to vote for that party.
Now,
And
see,
I don't get it.
Here it comes down to, we've always been about heroism. We've always been about moral choices. We put those moral choices in our games so that people could realize that, choices need to be made, and that you have to be on the side of angels, even when the angels suck, which, of course, if you've read Good Omens or watched the movie, you know that the side of angels isn't always the right place to be, but the side of the moral ground that is beneficial to people.
Yeah, and our entire concept of the paladin hero in Quest for Glory is one that does the right thing, even when it's unpopular, and even if it means that he has to go against authority. Some people that, to a lot of people, a hero is, a soldier.
Yeah.
Someone who goes out and kills people.
Traditionally, go read the Greek myths. Who are the heroes there? They all suck. They were horrible people. They left the women behind, and murdered people and everything else. Yeah, no.
But they did it bravely and
They did.
heroically.
So therefore,
So our idea of a hero is not that.
Mm-hmm.
Our heroes are good people.
yes, that do the good for the greatest good for the greatest amount of people, regardless.
Or at least your small part of whatever good you can do.
Yes, and yes, we consider everyday heroes like those people that Aziz's people, the ones that are performing medical things, saving people's lives and
Oh,
helping
not
them
the,
live.
not the Aziz in the game. This is Aziza.
This is Aziza, yes, the enchantress Aziza. Those are heroes. They really are. Yes. I did my undergrad education on the Middle East. Then I moved back to the States after college, and I swear one political party here is almost as bad as the Iranian government.
Yeah, it's insane to us. I mean, we don't have a problem with. I mean, there are always bad people, no problem. We know that. People will lie, people will cheat, people will steal. But we always thought that was a relatively small. That most people are inherently good. Most people will usually try to do the right thing. And the idea that people will actually glorify ones who lie, cheat, steal, break the law, that's, it's just, it's hard for us to even...
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, yes, we, as I said, back to that, interesting times. We've been having our... some of our delusions, maybe some of our basic beliefs brought into question by recent political events. And I mean, for the past 10 years, these things have been going on. And it's like, well, wait a second. We were protesting against climate change, and things like that.
In
When
the
we were
60s,
kids,
yeah.
we were learning about it as kids. Why
Yeah,
has
we were
it kept going?
10 years old or whatever.
Yeah. And some things did change. Smoking, for instance.
Yes.
Smoking
Was
really
everywhere when we grew up.
God, yes.
And
Everybody smoked.
by the time we were in our 30s, it was starting to be less, and now it's even less.
Right, and that's
California,
just a tiny
all public
thing.
places are smoke-free.
Yeah, and the prejudice, a lot of the prejudice against gays and things like that. Well, it was so much worse before, and it's and even when after they made it a major deal. They still haven't gone back to where it was before. Yeah.
And Dave Orr says, I think there were climate change papers as early as the 30s.
And those are, the terrifying thing of seeing those papers that the oil companies knew this was going on, and they made the conscious decision to keep going with it.
Yeah, London was essentially a death trap in the mid 19th century because of coal smoke everywhere, and pollution from factories and businesses,
dysentery and everything else.
and basically huge, very short lifespans, and so it's people have known about that and written about it, yeah, it's just. The problem is that it's expensive to deal with, and for any given individual or any given company, you're losing personal profit from doing it. But the long-term problem is that the longer you wait, A, the worse it gets, and B, the more expensive it becomes.
Yeah.
So where we could have spent maybe $10,000 a person to deal with it in the 1950s and 60s, now you're talking millions per person.
And then, of course, lead in gasoline. That was a great story. If you ever listened to that, they knew it poisoned people. They knew that the people that were working in the plants that actually was working with that
producing leaded gasoline.
were dying, and people made the conscious choice to push this stuff. And so, yes, there will always be evil, but it's our job always to be aware of this evil and to speak up and do things about it when we can. Yeah.
And of course, our anti-abortion friends would say, "Well, you're evil for." Well, we're not promoting abortion. We're saying that people should have freedom. People should have choice,
and that they should have alternatives.
Yes.
To abortion.
Like,
what do you know?
Like proper sex education and birth control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
what a radical
favorite
concept.
story was from the 70s. The state that had the most teenage
Pregnancies?
out of wedlock pregnancies
Was it
tended to
Alabama?
be no,
Oh.
Idaho.
Idaho. Oh.
And Idaho had the most church schools where you sent your kids to church to the schools, and they had the highest amount of pregnancy too, because of course they taught you can't use contraceptives and at all, but they didn't teach you about sex. Yes, yeah.
Well, Belk sort of makes interesting. It was saying like the story of tobacco companies know the product kills, and same with Purdue Pharma promoting and pushing
Yeah.
oxycodone with lies. Well, and the Sackler family is evil. Well, are they? Okay, so in a way, that's not that much different from providing abortion pills. Okay, a lot of people say, that's killing babies. It's evil. Oxycodone kills people, but the fact is that people want painkillers. They want strong painkillers because other stuff doesn't work for them, and they demand it.
But you're looking at that from the outside as opposed to the inside of the Sackler actually going into all these doctors and say push the things.
Yeah.
So there's a degree of difference.
There's evil there, but it's
Yeah.
in this. These things are complicated. They're not simple.
Yeah. Plus, there are probably going to be billions of refugees fleeing Central America and the Caribbean and other places because of climate change. Yeah. And hurricanes. Yes, we are going to have a lot of problems coming up. Yes.
I mean, right now
Yes, there
we've
we
got
go.
we've got Joe Biden, President Biden, effectively the Dutch boy keeping his finger in the dike because he has not allowed excessive immigration. The Republicans say that we've completely opened borders thanks to him, but it's just not true. He's really kept most Trump policies in place. But sooner or later, one thumb in the dike is not going to do it. The floodgates will open. We'll have a massive influx of hundreds of
Immigrants.
millions of people.
We cannot live there. Yes.
And we can't
Biden.
absorb that here either.
No, there's a lot of problems coming up. And it's coming sooner than we ever thought it would because we thought somebody would do something about it first. But, we'll all be suffering the consequences of inaction. And,
Yeah. Said the same thing about Obama, and look how many
Yeah,
people were
yeah.
deported. Well, of course, he didn't want to do that, but he was pressured by the fact that he had a split Congress.
yeah, I mean, there's no easy answers. There just aren't.
President is not all powerful,
No.
as much as some people would like them to be.
I mean, some of them act like they are. I mean, and acted like they were.
Yeah.
But, yes.
But they're not.
Yeah. Any rate, thank you all.
Thanks, everyone,
showing
for
up. I'm
coming.
sorry we've got this crazy discussion, but it happens.
And we originally, Lori was going to have me put together the list of 10 things to talk about,
the school,
which neither of us got around to.
Yeah, but we could have.
How to run a Kickstarter, things
Yes,
to be
yes. The
be aware of
10
bef-
lessons we learned from Hero U. But
Yeah, so maybe
Oh,
we'll do
well.
that. Maybe we'll do that again next time.
maybe because
Maybe
we
we'll catch up on what the original topic was supposed to be.
Oh, really? So, at any rate, thank you all for showing up. I hope you enjoyed this.
Game
interesting
development
thing.
business is
Yes,
hard.
It is. Yes. If it were about life, people wouldn't be bombing Brady. Yeah, you know that.
Well, some people are just, men especially, get these flashes of anger, and they do completely
A
irrational
school of
things.
politics, all good. That's not the ones we want to teach. Yes.
I
Have
put
a nice
I
night,
put a
everybody.
political channel into our Discord, and for the most part, it's civil. But we actually had to kick a couple of people because they started baiting other members and so on.
Okay.
So-
Always a pleasure listening to you. Well, it's always a pleasure having you people around. And
Thanks all for
getting to
coming,
Talk to you.
and
We're so
I
glad
hope
you-
nobody was too offended by this.
Yeah, I'm
if you are, leave a comment on the YouTube video about why and how you were offended, but it's got to be specific and
or
meaningful.
can you leave a discussion on Discord and we can have a discussion about it. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely come to our Let me post. He
You
said,
did it
wonder if
already,
it's
but-
wonder if it's still here.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yep,
There we
there's
go.
our Discord invite again, and use that. Join our Discord.
Stopped reading the political chatter because there were obnoxious people. Yeah, that's always a problem.
Yeah.
We try to ban the ones that are too obnoxious because we want our stupid Discord to be fun. So therefore,
It's and it doesn't matter left or right. I tried to go to. I did go to a Bernie Sanders march at one point when Bernie was running for president down in San Diego. I thought, for the way it was described, I thought he was going to be there, and no, he wasn't there. But and it was fine. They had some speakers and so on. But then we did our march, and the march was like everybody chanting, these meaningless, 6-word slogans or whatever. That's about all you can do when you're marching. But it's not constructive.
Okay. Yes. All right.
I did vote for Bernie in the primary, but
Anyway, see you later.
all right. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Be well. What do I do? End stream.
You get